Hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into Psalm 83. And let me tell you, this is one of those raw, powerful prayers that is just so perfect for those moments when you feel completely and utterly surrounded by opposition. Let's get right into it.
Have you ever felt like that? Just totally cornered, completely overwhelmed? And when you cry out to God, it just feels silent, like you need to hear from Him the most, and heaven just feels quiet. Well, that is exactly the feeling that kicks off this psalm.
So right out of the gate, we hear this desperate cry from Asaph, who was King David's worship leader. Now listen, this isn't a cry of doubt, not at all. It's a plea that comes from a place of deep faith. He's basically saying, God, I know what you're capable of, so please, I need you to act right now. This verse gives us permission to be gut-level honest with God about how desperate we feel.
Okay, now watch what Asaph does next, because it is absolutely brilliant. He immediately reframes the entire situation. He gets that this fight, it isn't just about him or about Israel. He looks at the attackers and calls them out for who they really are, God's enemies.
Asaph says they are tumult, all their noise and rebellion, and their pride, the way they've lifted up the head. It's a direct challenge to God's authority. And here's the key for us. When we face opposition because of our faith, it's almost never just personal. We're representing a God that the world often hates and rejects.
And right in the middle of this terrifying conspiracy, Asaph uses this beautiful, really intimate term for God's people. He calls them thy hidden ones. What a picture. It's this incredible reminder that even when we feel totally exposed and vulnerable, God sees us as something precious, cherished, and held securely by Him, like a jewel.
And you know what? This is where it becomes so real for every single believer today. That Old Testament idea finds its ultimate fulfillment right here in Colossians. Our real life, our eternal security, is completely untouchable because it is hidden safely away with Christ in God. So what was the enemy's endgame here? Asaph makes it chillingly clear. This wasn't just some border dispute. This was a plot for total annihilation. Verse 4 says, their goal was to cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. They wanted to literally erase God's people, and by extension God's name, from the pages of history.
And just look at the sheer scale of this threat. It wasn't one or two enemies. It was a 10-nation confederacy. Israel was surrounded on every single side. You know what makes this sting even more? Many of these nations, like the Edomites and the Ishmaelites, were relatives of Israel. This was betrayal on an international scale.
So you're faced with this impossible situation. What do? This is the turning point of the whole psalm. Asaph pivots. He stops describing the size of the problem and starts reminding God and himself of God's perfect track record. His prayer becomes a powerful weapon built on memory.
And he doesn't just ask for some generic help. No, he gets specific. He starts recalling God's greatest hits from the book of Judges, how he miraculously defeated the Midianites for Gideon, how Sisera's army was completely wiped out. He is literally building his faith for the fight he's in today by standing on God's faithfulness from yesterday.
And now, the prayer really kicks into high gear with these intense, vivid images. First, he asks God to make the enemy like a wheel. He's talking about a tumbleweed. He's praying, God, make this powerful, united enemy rootless, unstable, and totally helpless, just tumbling around at your mercy.
And he keeps going. As the stubble before the wind. You know that light, useless stuff left over after the harvest? He's asking God to show just how insignificant their power really is. To just blow them away like dust in the wind.
Then he turns up the heat. As the fire burneth the wood, the intensity just keeps building. He's asking for God's judgment to be like an unstoppable forest fire, consuming all of their wicked plans and burning away their pride.
And finally, he prays for the full force of God's power. So persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. He is asking for an overwhelming display of God's might to completely scatter their conspiracy and leave them terrified and in disarray.
Okay, so after all that intense language, tumbleweeds, fire, storms, you might be thinking this prayer is all about revenge, right? But it's not. Asaph reveals the true purpose behind these cries for judgment, and honestly, it changes everything.
This is the absolute heart of the entire psalm. The ultimate goal here is actually redemptive. Asaph prays that their humiliating defeat would shatter their pride so completely that it would lead them to seek the one true God. Wow, he's praying for their salvation.
So what does all this mean for us today when we're the ones feeling surrounded? Well, Psalm 83 isn't just an ancient poem. It gives us a clear and powerful battle plan. Here it is. Step 1, be brutally honest with God. Pour it all out. Step 2, recognize this is a spiritual battle. It's about Him. See opposition as a chance for God to get the glory. 3, remember, look back at Scripture. Look back in your own life and recall His faithfulness. And finally, step 4, pray for His glory. Make God's reputation, not just your own relief, the ultimate goal of your prayer.
And this is how it all ends. The grand finale isn't about the problem. It's not even about the victory itself. It's this magnificent, booming declaration of God's supreme authority. The whole point is so that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. That's the ultimate win.
This devotional explainer was brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team. We truly pray it has strengthened your faith and encouraged you today.